Hello everyone, I'm Atul Dahale and welcome to my Incredible Chess channel. Today I'm back on this channel you can say, and I'm here with a very good news that our very own 19 years old Indian superstar Nihal Sarin has crossed 2700 rating points, guys. He has become the ninth player in the history of Indian chess to cross 2700 rating. Before him, we all know this thing that our youngsters, we can even call them as fantastic four now. Arjun, Erigaisi, R Praggananandhaa and Gukesh has already crossed 2700 rating. Now it is the time for Nihal Sarin. We are going to look at the game in which he beat his opponent Paulis from Lithuania, who was also a very strong player, I will say. 2586 is rating, and playing with the black pieces, Nihal Sarin opted for a very solid opening, and after that in the middle game lots of complication happened. So I'm going to show you a detailed game analysis in this video, so stay tuned with me till the end and enjoy the game. Okay, and before we go further, I would like to request you that don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you are new here. So let's begin. In this game, Paulis was playing with white pieces, Nihal Sarin was black, and the game started with d4. Nihal decided to play knight to f6, c4 and e6. Of course, the game might be going towards many different openings here, but Nihal decided to play bishop b4, that is the Nimzo Indian opening. Here, white opted for e3, which is considered to be one of the strongest reply in this opening. I have played this opening from white as well as black side, and I can assure you this thing that the e3 system as well as the Nimzo Indian system are very solid. So we'll go further. Here c5 was played. After c5, bishop to d3. I would like to just tell you one thing, that in this position castling is one of the ideas, or you can even go for d5, and all the positions can lead to the same position which happened in the game also. Here usually white plays knight to f3 and then c5, bishop to d3, knight c6, castles, and now after castle white can play a3, capture is one of the option, or there's also one more interesting line is there, that is bishop to a5. After bishop a5, here white might capture the pawn on c5, but then black captures on c3, b captures c3, d captures c4, and then if bishop captures on c4, black can play queen to a5, and the c5 pawn will be under a little bit pressure, I will say, and definitely black will get that pawn back. In the game, instead of playing d5 and all, Nihal decided to play c5, inviting his opponent to capture on c5. Okay, but opponent was not in that mood to capture any pawn. He plays bishop to d3. Now knight c6 comes on the board. The point is the pawn on d4 is under attack, so white needs to support the pawn on d4. He supports with knight f3, and now Nihal plays d5. After d5, it is almost getting to the position which I was talking about. Here white castles, and now if black castles, we will get the same position which we discussed before some time. But here Nihal decided to capture on c4, trying to change the game into something unique. And after this, bishop captures c4, he castled. Okay, white played a3, attacking the bishop. Bishop went to a5 square. Of course, bishop captures c3 is also one of the options in the position, but he decided to play bishop to a5. One thing I would like to show you, that after bishop captures c3, b captures c3, queen c7 is an interesting option. And now if h3, this kind of a move is played, here we can go for e5, and I will say that after e5, bishop to a2 or bishop to b2, these two prominent moves are there from white side, and game becomes very complicated. Okay, so in this game, instead of capturing on c3 and going for the usual stuff, he goes for bishop to a5. Now white plays bishop d3, queen e7, preparing for the breakthroughs like e5 in future maybe, or the rook can also come on d8 square. Okay, so white decides to play knight e4, and now he captures on d4, e captures d4, and now here he plays h6. Of course, the idea is to stop bishop to g5 in the position. White plays queen e2, getting the pieces in the game, you can say connecting the pieces is also very important. Nihal decides to attack the pawn on d4 square with rook d8. Bishop to e3 was played, and now knight comes on d5 square. Centralizing the knight is always a good idea. Always remember, whenever you can, you should try to put your knight in front of the isolated pawn also. especially if the isolated pawn is in the center of the board. Like that, the way you can see the pawn on d4 square is an isolated pawn, and there is no pawn on c and e5, so the d5 square is a very secure square for the knight. Okay, white plays rook a c1, and now the question is what to do with the bishop on c8 square. Well, Nihal finds a very easy answer to this thing, that he maneuvers the bishop to a better square. Of course, this bishop is kind of restricted because of the pieces and pawns which are placed on the light squares, but he finds his way. He first of all plays bishop d7, opponent plays knight c5, attacking the pawn on b7. He plays bishop to e8, supporting the pawn on b7, and after this, white starts playing a little bit tricky chess. He plays bishop to b1. Of course, the idea of bishop b1 is not to go just behind, but the thing is that he wants to play queen d3 or queen c2 and threaten checkmate here on this side of the board. Of course, Nihal understands this thing. He plays rook a c8. He said like, after you play this move, I have f5, a good move. f5 not only stops this diagonal, means this battery here, but also gives some room for the bishop to come on this diagonal and exert some pressure. Here, white decides to play b4, attacking the bishop on a5. Bishop goes to b6 square, and now he very calmly plays rook f e1. And now, as we were discussing about this thing earlier also, here Nihal goes for bishop to h5, attacking the knight on f3. He plays bishop d2, and here white was thinking maybe that if bishop captures f3 happens, queen will be capturing, but the problem is then in that case the pawn on d4 will be hanging. So after bishop captures f3, he had to capture with the pawn, and now Nihal still continues his attack. He plays queen to f6, attacking. First he captures on c5, rook captures c5, and now he plays queen to f6, attacking the pawn on d4 square. He supports the pawn here, and now Nihal had a very nice trick up his sleeves. He plays b6 in this position, rook goes behind, and can you spot the move which Nihal played in this position? It was a very crucial position, I will say. You can pause the video and think about the position. What are the options in the position? You can see this thing that white's king is a little bit exposed. The pawn on d4 is a weakness, and we need to do something about it. I will be waiting for your answer here. You can answer me in the comment section. I hope you got it. And the move which was played in this position, I hope you got it correctly. The move was knight captures d4. The point is, if bishop captures d4, then we can simply go for queen to g5 check first. King will move to h1 or f1, and then we can capture the rook on c1 free of cost, because after this it is just winning position for black, I will say. So instead of bishop captures d4, if queen captures d4 happens in the game, like it happened also in the game, the move is rook captures c1. The point of rook captures c1 is, you might say like, oh, in this position Nihal just lost the piece and maybe he did not get any return. But Nihal has seen something much deeper in this position. He utilizes his knight which is sitting in the corner, in the center of the board in the center of the board, and he plays knight f4. The threat is very real in this position. The rook on d8 attacks the bishop on d4. There is also a threat of knight e2 followed by capturing the rook on c1. And in this position, if white tries to save the bishop like this, we can simply go for rook captures d4, or you can even play knight e2 check followed by knight captures d4 is also one of the possibilities in the position. But I will definitely play rook captures d4, which is more forcing in my way. And after rook captures d4, knight e2 check, king f1, and knight captures d4, black is pawn up, plus white's pawn structure is also not that great, and definitely this position is better for black. So that's why here in this position white decided to take back the pawn, and he played bishop into b6. Here the problem is that if you go for knight e2, which will be a big mistake, because after king f1, if knight captures the rook on c1, bishop into d8, and white will be piece up in the position. So of course here Nihal captured the bishop on b6 with a pawn, and now king f1. Well, this bishop is kind of restricted in the position, but once this bishop gets some room, it will be very challenging position for Nihal to win. Okay, and he had to win the position. That's what the thing is. Here he plays rook to d2, trying to put some pressure on white's king and also on the second rank. We all know this thing that the rook on the 7th and the second rank is a very powerful piece, and The main thing about rook being on the second or the seventh rank is that opponent's king cannot really participate in the game, and that's what also happened in this game. So white had to play very carefully in order to maintain the balance, and he did balance everything properly, but in the end, you know what happened. So we'll continue and we'll see how the game proceeded. Stay tuned with me, okay guys, till the end. King to e1, attacking the rook on d2 square by the king. Rook moves to e2 square, check, king f1, and now he plays rook b2. Okay, bishop c2 comes, the rook looks a little bit awkwardly placed in the position. He plays b5, but right now nobody is going to attack the rook on b2 square. He plays b5 in the position, king e1, and after this rook a2, again attacking the pawn on a3. He plays a4 because he needs to create some passed pawn for himself also. So that's why he plays a4, trying to get some play with the b pawn. White plays king d2, rook b2 happens, attacking the pawn here. And now finally white decided to exchange the rooks in this position. After this action, it feels that white is having some compensation for sure for the sacrificed or the lost pawn, you can say. This knight on f4 is not doing good job, so Nihal decides to bring the knight in the center of the board, attacking the pawn on b4. He plays b5, and now it's time to get the king in the game. King f7 comes, rook. The rooks were off the board, so the king needs to take charge of the position. He plays king f7, bishop to a2, and now knight b6, king to c3, king e7, king b4, and now king to d6. The point is now the a4 pawn is protected by the knight, and even if king a5 comes, which happened in the game eventually, king will be going to c5 square and the knight will be very safe. So here in this position, white plays f4, he plays g5, trying to get some activity, you can say, for the pawns here. After this move, king a5, king c5, which we already discussed before some time. White plays f captures g5. His doubled pawn, which were there on the h and the f file, are gone now. They are single and still fighting in the game, you can say. Bishop captures e6. Okay, after bishop captures e6, the material count has leveled, but Nihal doesn't give up in the position. He keeps on fighting. He plays a3. He gives the threat that if you capture on f5, then the a2, a1 will be queen in the position. So he plays bishop b3, then f4, bishop to a2, and now after knight c4 check, there was only one move for white to survive in the game. The move was king to a4, but unfortunately his opponent did not play king a4. I'll be showing you why king a4 is important, but he played king a6. Okay, we'll come to king a6 also. First of all, let's see what happens if king a4 is played. If king a4 is played, then in that position, even if you play f3 or something like that, the point is bishop can capture the knight, and after that the king will capture the pawn. Even if you capture here, the king will be rushing towards, you can say, this side of the board here like this, and the pawn on f3 is going to be in big trouble. So of course, just capturing the knight and think out winning is not possible. The king had to be there on a4 square to be in touch with the pawn on a3 square, but alas, that move was not played. Fortune favors the brave, that's what they say. Here he plays king to a6, f3 is played, and then bishop to b3, g4, bishop to a2, and now finally he decides to leave the knight and the pawn, everything, and go towards the opponent's pawn on f2 so that he can create the passed pawn and queen the pawn. Okay, so king b7 was played, then he plays king to c5, again attacking here, king a6, and then he finally plays knight to d6, where it cannot be dislodged by any of white's pieces. It cannot be attacked, and he can safely and gradually go towards the f2 pawn. He plays king d4, king a5, knight to c4. This was a very good move, because if you play king to a6 in this position, then knight will to b6 followed by this capture, and then black will be going towards the f2 pawn. White is helpless. White cannot really do anything about that thing, and slowly and gradually with two pawns forward, I think black will be winning the game. But in the game, king b4 was played, attacking the pawn on e3, but that did not stop black from winning the game. Nihal Sarin played knight captures b6, king captures a3, then again a check, king a4, and then finally he plays knight b2 check. White decides to resign the game, because no matter where you play your king, the next move is going to be knight d3, the pawn on f2 is going to fall. Once the pawn on f2 falls, it is just easy technique for Nihal. So that's why his opponent Paulius decided to resign the game, and this game made sure that Nihal Sarin crosses 2700 rating. That's completely amazing. I can say that Nihal is a brilliant, talented player, and I hope that someday he will become the world chess champion. Send wishes in the comment section, guys. How did you like this game and everything? Do comment and let me know. Till that moment, we will be meeting very soon. Till that moment, thank you very much.